Welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventures Hunting Podcast, right here on Brownfield Ag News. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Brent Barnett. Really excited about the show we have for you this week. We're joined by a special guest, Dan Infalt, a hunter from Wisconsin, who is the founder of The Hunting Beast, a really popular hunting show that you can catch online and on YouTube. Dan, thanks a lot for taking some time to join us. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing, Brent?
Doing great. And, I haven't had any success up to this point in the season. I've been out several times hunting some public land where I'm located in central Iowa. I will say it seems like the hunting pressure has been kind of on the rise in my neck of the woods this year, Dan. What have you been seeing up your way?
The bow hunting pressure was really high. The gun hunting pressure is kind of going way down.
Yep. Well, it seems like the bow hunting pressure is up here for sure. And I know here in the state this coming weekend, December 2nd, the shotgun season opens up. So I know a lot of people will be getting out for that. Do you mind here as we kind of lead off, just, filling the listeners in on your hunting life a little bit, where you grew up and how you got started with the hunting beast?
Oh, geez. I've been hunting my whole life. So I kind of grew up pretty modest. My parents came from the Great Depression, so they're all about gathering and kind of, creating food and stuff. They didn't have much money. So we fished a lot, hunted a lot, trapped a lot when I was a kid. And I just really took to the hunting part of it. And, at first it was about getting meat. And I got really good at killing. And then when you get real good and you start filling all your tags and stuff, you start getting selective. And I started really, trying to figure out how to kill bigger animals. And the good and the bad thing is that I had no mentors. My dad didn't really hunt. He did 2 jobs and stuff, and he was really happy to get the deer home, and his thing was more the fishing and the mushrooms and the berries and stuff. But I hunted on my own most of the time and had to learn things on my own. And there wasn't the networks and stuff of people to teach you bad methods and stuff like there is now. You kind of learn from the animals, and I think a lot of times people hunt based on stereotypes of what is said. If one person says something that's got a name or recognition, it just goes like wildfire, and everybody starts repeating and doing that. And I always kind of look for the niche. One of the biggest reasons I've been successful is because I will concentrate more on where do people not go, because I know that's the thing with the deer is they just want to be where people aren't, and figuring that out, whether it's right next to the road in between parking lots or it's really remote across the river. But for some reason, people don't go there, but it still has the habitat they need. That's where I usually find the mature ones. And I started knocking down a lot of big bucks, back in the 90s. I think the period of between my 20s and 30s was probably my peak period. When you got that good dose of ego and energy that won't quit, and you can hunt 24/7, and sleep 2 hours, and work in the dark. And I got a lot of big bucks back then, just by sheer determination. But during that sheer determination years, I learned a lot. And and eventually I got to an age where my ego tempered down a little bit, maybe even to a point of where people could tolerate it, and started, looking back on all those hunts and stuff, and try to hunt more now, smarter instead of harder, but that's kind of what the book's about. I mean, you wanted to talk about the book, but the book is really about those struggles through my life, that whole path. Some of the stories go back to the 70s and 80s and 90s. And it's not just hunting. It's not a hunting book like other books you've read. It really goes into the psychological part of the hunting and talks about the people I've ran into that had an impact on me, and the things that happened in my life. It's like the life of a hunter, but not necessarily all about hunting.
So the book you're referencing, Dan, is Gone Feral for the listeners tuning in. Your new book that just recently came out. Where did you come up with the name Gone Feral? How does that fit in?
When I was a boy, my mom used to always call me a feral kid. I had hair down to my butt, and I'd always come home with burdocks in my hair, and my t-shirt half ripped off, and she'd be like, "There's that feral kid again." It just kind of
Oh,
stuck.
yeah, that's cool. So how did you put this together? Is this just like compiling some of your greatest memories and stories and putting them into a book form?
Yeah, over the years, I've written stories for media or whatever, and put them in different places. And the best ones I've kept. And I I can't remember how many are in that book, but it's over 200, I think. But I'd have to look. But I kept all the best ones, and at some point, I decided to compile them together and put them together and put some cool pictures that go back in time with each story. There's a lot of really, really good photos in there. Um, but yeah, it's I think it's a really cool book, and everybody that actually buys it has compliments to tell me about it. So I think everybody seems to like it. I think it
I know,
catches people by surprise because the stories are kind of you get locked into them.
sure. And just from watching your channel in years past, you've made it very clear that you're there to help educate other hunters. Just from your experiences in the field over the years and showing everything that you can on camera, is this kind of a similar theme with the book, is to help other hunters?
Yeah, my mission has always been to make people better hunters and hunters better people. I think if you grow up in hunting and you live a life in hunting, um, generally those are better people. I think they get along better. I think they understand life and death better. I think you spend a little time meeting God when you're sitting in a tree, um, more than standing on concrete with your buddies drinking. Um, and I know that my high school days were in the early '80s, and everybody in that time frame was on drugs. Everybody was drinking. I mean, literally everybody. There might be 1 or 2% of the class that didn't partake, and you're harassed pretty bad if you didn't. And I took to the woods and kind of avoided all that. I just the woods was my savior, and I think it can be for a lot of young people that are just kind of outcasts. I think they can turn to that. I think just about anybody can, and it'll turn their life around. And I just like to see more people have that opportunity that I had, you know, to go that direction. I think hunting's a wholesome thing, and I think we need more people getting involved in hunting. And
You know,
if we teach them how to hunt and we give them the tools, there's a lot of people out there struggling, and the old school mentality was always don't give the secrets out, keep them to yourself so you're better than everybody. Where I freely give that information out, and I freely try to help these people, especially young people, gain success faster and take some shortcuts that I learned that might have took me 10 years to learn, just hand them to them, because if they're successful, they'll stick with it. But if they go out day after day and see nothing, they won't. So that's why I try to help people.
well, and I'll just tell you, Dan, just for me personally, I grew up in a hunting family and was introduced to that as a young kid. I remember going quail and pheasant hunting in Northwest Missouri with my grandpa. Some of my favorite memories when I was a little kid, and going on bow hunts with my dad when I was too young to even pull a bow back, and I would sit at the edge of the tree stand, one of their wooden homemade tree stands. And I remember the one of the first times I went with him, he arrowed this small little basket rack 8-point at 10 yards with a bow that had like an axle to axle of like 44 inches, big giant bow. I remember that thing. It was an old Hoyt, I think. Um, but just seeing him shoot that bow and nail it right behind the shoulder, the buck went like 20 yards and fell over. I was just hooked from right then on. I knew I always wanted to hunt. And believe it or not, it wasn't until I started watching programs like your show specifically, and the hunting public guys. I had never been introduced to public land in my life until about 4 or 5 years ago, and I can just say from your guys's programs that really got me excited. And so I'm in my 4th year now of trying out public land, solely that. And I will say I haven't harvested a buck yet on public, but I've had a lot of good learning experiences here and just trying to figure out how the deer move and where I need to be, how they, where they go based off of human access and everything like that. And so hopefully, there's still a little bit of season left here, but I'm really, really hoping to notch that tag. But yeah, so as we kind of look ahead here at the top of the program, we mentioned how maybe there is a little bit of a rise in some bow hunting pressure. Does that make you feel like there is, more of a younger generation getting involved in hunting and wanting to try it out?
Well, certainly. It's changed tremendously. If we go back 20 years ago, when I'd go into public land, the bow hunters I'd run into wouldn't be very well educated. They'd be hunting hilltops, they'd be hunting rub lines, they'd be hunting on the side of cornfields. Nobody'd be down in the bedding. Nobody'd be on little islands out in the marshes and stuff, little points going out. You'd go find a point and you'd find it on a map going into a cattail marsh. You'd be like, oh my gosh, it's laid out so well for the wind. Bucks are going to be right on the tip of that. And you're like, everybody should be there. And you'd go out there and there's no spot where anybody ever set up a stand. But there's places to do it. And you're like, wow, nobody's ever hunted this. That's no longer the case. Now the hunters have turned into educated hunters and they're coming out there. And I have a lot of non-resident hunters showing up and hunting and they know what they're doing. And I'd like to think I have something to do with that, and it's kind of cool. A lot of people give me heck for it. I mean, they say that, now you make my hunting harder. Well, just figure out where the deer went. They're still there. You got to use your mind. That's part of the whole thing about the public land hunting. The thrill is, for me, I mean, I get offers all the time to go to outfitters, free hunts and stuff, just because they know if I do that, they'll get publicity. I normally don't take them. I might if it wasn't something like whitetails that I don't normally do. But for whitetails, I mean, my thrill is, going on an equal playing field, figuring out what everybody else is missing and hunting that buck down. And, when I kill a buck, I want to go on to the next one. And seldom do I ever shoot the real big ones in the same spot I've already been in. It's usually a whole new spot. You figure out a new one, go in there and get them. And when you go into like a 2,000 acre marsh and you find a buck in there that you want to kill and you watch him for a few years, you pick up his sheds, you get a picture or two of him, and he's in there. And there's 2 million trees you could hunt out of. And you walk through there in the spring and you try to figure out where he lives. And you figure out, okay, I think at this time of the year he's going to be here. This is where he's going to travel to. This is how he's going to come out of here. This is the tree he's going to come by in daylight. This is close enough. And you figured out what wind you got to be in, and you leave it alone until that day comes. And you go in there on that day, and that buck gets out of the bed that you thought he'd get out of. It walks to you, and you kill it out of one tree out of 4 million that you could kill him out of. Inside, that's a feeling of completion, like you really did something. It's way different than sitting over a food plot and just having some random buck coming in or one that you get pictures of every day that fenced in property. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Teach your own. But for me, that accomplishment of getting on an equal playing field where anybody could have went out there and found that tree, but I did the work, I found it, and I got that buck. There's something to that.
Do you feel that woodsmanship aspect is maybe getting lost a little bit with the advancements we're seeing in technology with things like cell cameras and things like that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it's getting lost in some ways and found in others. It's getting found with technology. Not too long ago, you got to the point where nobody could read a compass or anything, but then all of a sudden they got GPS and then they got, Spartan Forge and Onyx and stuff like that. But that technology definitely hurts it for some people. I like cell cams, but they get a bit annoying when you run into them everywhere in the woods. I can't go on a hunt without running into 3-4 of them, and people will put them everywhere. And I think what a lot of young people think is if they put out 40 of those or something between them and their buddies or something, that all they have to do is sit and watch their phones. And when a buck shows up, go there and kill it. And it ain't really that easy, but that's what they think. And then it's almost like they claim the spot, and you go in there and you're like, oh, okay, I can't hunt here. Somebody's in here, and then you find those cameras everywhere. So it gets a little annoying, but I wish there was a limit on them or something they could do. But on the upside, it is nice to use that technology, but it kind of takes away from some things too. Like there's no longer surprises. If there's a giant buck around, everybody knows about it. There's pictures getting taken of them everywhere, and all that kind of stuff. That last big buck I shot in Wisconsin, 7 or 8 different people sent me trail cam pics of it.
Wow. One of my favorite videos of yours, Dan, that really stuck with me is the story of the Rome legend buck. And I know it's a kind of a long, detailed story, but do you mind sharing that with the listeners about the Rome legend buck?
Yeah, that's probably going on about 10, 12 years now. The Rome legend buck, that buck was a buck that everybody around the town of Rome knew about. And everybody was talking about it, everybody's going to get it. And it was staying on the side of the road where it wasn't public, mostly. But it would come across onto the public side more at night. But it would occasionally get seen on the public side. But across the road was like a game preserve where they have paid hunting, but it's not fenced in or anything. But for whatever reason, what I figured out was that buck liked the does on the public land side, which I don't know why, because there's less does in the public land than there is on the other side of the road in the food plots and stuff. But he would come every rut. It must have been one particular girl he liked or something. But he'd come across the road onto our side. And I had a few interactions with him. And one time I went in to hunt him, I kind of figured out this bedding area where he was hanging when he was over there. And he had these really high rubs, and he was pretty much the only mature buck around. So you knew if you saw those rubs that were, the center of them were chest high, you knew that it was him. And I'd kind of watch for those rubs to show up. And when it looked like he was in there, I went in to hunt him, and I didn't quite get to my destination. And there's a little doe bedding area that usually doesn't have deer in it, but sometimes it does. It was only like 100 yards from my destination. He jumps up with a doe, and they split and both run 2 different ways. So I set up there and hoping he comes back to go track the doe because it was rut. And he came back and did a wide sweep downwind until he caught my wind and then buggered out of there. But if I would have, I was even thinking about it when I set up, maybe I should set up at the first transition because he's probably going to check spot. I didn't, and he did. And then the next year, all kinds of people were seeing him. It started getting really popular. And he was coming across the road at night and leaving a rub line he was going right through the parking lot and right up this like login road path that everybody took to access. And he'd make scrapes all the way up this road and rub all the trees and stuff. So I was watching this rub line real intently, because when that rub line would appear, it came out of that bedding area and it kind of confirmed that he was in there. And that way I didn't have to go near the bedding area. When that rub line finally lit up, it was Halloween day. And I went back there, and I can remember on my way in there, when I got close to him, I had to go by like 3 or 4 different people. One guy had decoys out, a buck decoy, and these guys are looking at you like, and you're like, there's no way that deer is getting here. They were 200 yards from where that deer bedded, but that was too far. So I got around and I got into where I knew where his beds were and got up this tree real quiet and sat there, and I kind of knew where he'd be within a bed or two. And I'm staring there, and he stands up. It's probably about sunset, which is a half an hour before closing. And he turns, he starts heading towards me, and it's about 75 yards from me. And by the time he got that 75 yards and I took the shot, it was right at closing time when I shot him. So he got 75 yards in rut. So I don't think any of those guys had a chance, really. Not unless he got a bug up his butt and he started chasing one of those does or something. But you really don't, on that heavy pressured public, you really don't see those mature ones make those mistakes often. It's usually the younger ones.
That kind of brings up a good question I had for you as far as dealing with pressure. And I think you've maybe kind of answered it. If you get to a place where there's a buck and you have a good idea where he's bedding, Dan, um, do other hunters, stop you from going in there, or do you have an idea where you go and you just walk by and have to do what you got to do?
I'll usually walk by them. I'm not going to walk around and screw somebody up, but if they're hunting someplace that's just kind of like doesn't seem to have a purpose, I'll just find a way around them, or if they're far enough back, I'll just go way around them or something, but I don't want to screw somebody else's hunt up either. If they're near where I'm going, I just leave and come back a different day.
So again, your new book is called Gone Feral. Really happy for you. Is this your first book, Dan, or do you have some
The
others?
second book.
Second
My
book?
second book.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How can listeners find it? I know we've got the holidays coming up. Might be a good option for anyone that has a hunter in their family.
It's real easy. Just search Dan Infalt books or search Gone Feral book on Amazon. So my books are sold on Amazon.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking some time here to join us here on our short little Brownfield outdoor program, and best of luck to you the rest of the season. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you having me on, and best of luck to you too.
Thank you. Again, that's Dan Infalt with The Hunting Beast, right here on Brownfield's Outdoor Adventures. I'm Brent Barnett. Thanks for watching this week.